The Seahawks and 49ers decided to turn the NFC West into a war zone. And honestly, it was beautiful. This rivalry didn't even exist until 2002 when Seattle moved to the NFC West. But once it started, pure madness. For decades, these teams couldn't care less about each other. They were too busy being mediocre. But then 2010 rolled around, and Pete Carroll showed up in Seattle, followed by Jim Harbaugh taking over San Francisco in 2011. And here's the thing. These guys already hated each other from their college days at USC and Stanford. They brought that grudge to the NFL and cranked it up to 11. From 2010 to 2014, one of these teams won the NFC West championship every single year. Both drafted mobile quarterbacks, Russell Wilson and Colin Kaepernick. And suddenly, we had the perfect storm of coaching beef, quarterback rivalry, and genuine locker room hatred. Patrick Willis said it best. "We're not throwing little jabs that barely hurt. We're trying to knock each other out." That's not trash talk. That's a mission statement. The 2013 NFC Championship game was the peak of this chaos. Seahawks versus 49ers with a Super Bowl trip on the line. Seattle won 23-17. But the game ended with Richard Sherman tipping a pass in the end zone, leading to an interception. Sherman then gave one of the most legendary post-game rants in NFL history, calling out Michael Crabtree and declaring himself the best corner in the game. The 49ers were devastated. The Seahawks went on to demolish Denver in the Super Bowl. The hatred was complete. But wait, because even after Harbaugh left, this rivalry kept the same energy. Russell Wilson absolutely owned the 49ers after that championship game. We're talking a 17-4 record before he bounced to Denver in 2022. Then the 49ers flipped the script and won 6 straight games against Seattle, the longest win streak they've ever had in this rivalry. Seattle finally ended it in November 2024 with a 2017 win, but the damage was done. The Seahawks lead the all-time series 31-24, but this rivalry proved something important. You don't need decades of history to build genuine animosity. Sometimes all you need is 2 coaches who already hate each other and a conference championship game to make it legendary. Now, if you want a rivalry with actual history, let me introduce you to the Packers and Cowboys, where Super Bowl championships and controversial calls have been ruining friendships since the 1960s. These teams don't even play every year, but when they do, someone's season is about to get wrecked. The rivalry started with the Ice Bowl in 1967. The legendary NFL championship game played in -13-degree temperatures at Lambeau Field. The Packers won and went on to become back-to-back Super Bowl champions. Vince Lombardi's Packers dominated the Cowboys in the 60s, winning all 6 matchups and establishing Green Bay as the team to beat. Then the 1990s happened, and Dallas said, "Our turn." The Cowboys, with Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, and Michael Irvin, the legendary triplets, absolutely demolished the Packers. We're talking 9 wins out of 10 meetings in the 90s, including 3 straight playoff victories from 1993 to 1995. Dallas won 2 Super Bowls after beating Green Bay in the postseason. The Cowboys owned the Brett Favre era so thoroughly that Favre went 2-9 against them, including 0-9 in Dallas. That's not a rivalry, that's a hostage situation. But then Aaron Rodgers showed up and decided to personally ruin Dallas's entire existence. Rodgers went 8-2 against the Cowboys during his time as Green Bay's starter, including a perfect 3-0 record in Dallas. But the most controversial moment came in the 2014 playoffs with the infamous Dez Caught-It game. 4th down, late in the game, the Packers won 26-21, and the controversy was so massive that the NFL literally changed the catch rules 3 years later. Cowboys fans are still traumatized. 2 years later, in the 2016 playoffs, the Packers stunned Dallas again. Aaron Rodgers hit Jared Cook for 36 yards on 3rd and 20 with 3 seconds left. Then Mason Crosby drilled a 51-yard field goal as time expired. The Packers lead the all-time series 22-17 and hold a 5-4 playoff advantage. This rivalry has given us championship games, rule changes, and enough heartbreak to fuel therapy sessions for decades. Speaking of decades of pain, let's talk about the Browns and Steelers, the oldest rivalry in the AFC and possibly the most lopsided beating in modern football. These teams first met in 1950, and they've played 146 times since then. The rivalry is called the Turnpike Rivalry because Cleveland and Pittsburgh are only 135 miles apart, and fans regularly make the drive to away games just to talk trash in person. The city of Youngstown sits right between them, split 50-50 on team loyalty, which probably causes more arguments at family dinners than politics. Here's the wild part. The Browns absolutely dominated early on, winning 31 of the first 40 games in the 1950s and 60s. Then the 1970s arrived, and Pittsburgh decided to become a dynasty. The Steelers won 15 of 20 games against Cleveland, while collecting 4 Super Bowl titles. But the Browns hit back in 1989 with the most savage beatdown in the rivalry's history, a 51-0 demolition in Pittsburgh. It remains the worst loss in Steelers franchise history. Clay Matthews returned a fumble for a touchdown. David Grayson took another fumble to the house. And by halftime, it was 30-0. The Browns weren't just winning, they were humiliating Pittsburgh on their home turf. But then the 1990s and 2000s happened, and the Steelers turned this rivalry into a Cleveland horror movie. Since the Browns' last series sweep in 1988, the Steelers went 39-11 against them. That's not a rivalry, that's a public execution. Ben Roethlisberger went 26-3 against the Browns during his career. Mike Tomlin has been Pittsburgh's coach since 2007, and he's 26-8-1 against Cleveland. The Browns had a 17-game losing streak at Heinz Field from 2004 to 2021. 17 straight losses in Pittsburgh. That's psychological warfare. The rivalry got even uglier in 2019 when Myles Garrett ripped off Mason Rudolph's helmet and swung it at him, causing a massive brawl and getting suspended for the rest of the season. The Steelers lead the all-time series 83-64-1, and while Cleveland finally got a playoff win over Pittsburgh in 2021, beating them 48-37, the overall dominance has been brutal. This rivalry has everything. Decades of history, blowout games, playoff battles, and genuine hatred between two blue-collar cities that will never, ever stop trash-talking each other. The Falcons and Saints, a rivalry so petty, so bitter, and so geographically close that it makes Thanksgiving dinner look like a peace summit. These teams entered the NFL 1 year apart in the mid-1960s as the league's first franchises in the Deep South. The first regular season meeting in 1967 drew over 83,000 fans to Tulane Stadium, and the physicality was off the charts from the jump. Former Falcons cornerback Ken Reeves said it perfectly. It was a real physical game. Very, very physical, hard played. And I remember there were a lot of individual battles, and I was in most of them. Translation, they were throwing hands from day one. The rivalry exploded in 1973 when Atlanta demolished New Orleans 62-7, the largest loss in Saints history. 6 interceptions, complete humiliation, a 55-point beatdown that Saints fans are probably still having nightmares about. But the most iconic moment came in 2006 after Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans. The Saints' first game back in the Superdome was against Atlanta, and on the opening drive, Steve Gleason blocked a punt that Curtis DeLoach recovered for a touchdown. The Saints won 23-3, and that blocked punt became a symbol of New Orleans' resilience. They built a statue of it outside the Superdome called Rebirth. The Falcons didn't give permission for their logos to be on it, which is the most petty, perfect detail of this entire rivalry. The Drew Brees versus Matt Ryan era turned this rivalry into must-watch television every single time. These two quarterbacks faced each other 23 times as starters, a record for most matchups between two starting QBs in the Super Bowl era. The games were high-scoring, dramatic, and often decided by one possession. Sean Payton went 19-8 against Atlanta during his time as Saints coach, flipping decades of Falcons dominance. The all-time series is tied 57-56, with Atlanta barely holding the edge. That's how close this rivalry is. Over 110 games, and they're separated by 1 win. The hatred between these fan bases is real. Saints fans chant, "Who dat?" while Falcons fans fire back with "Dirty Birds," and the contempt is so thick you could cut it with a knife. ESPN called it one of the best rivalries in sports because every year, bus caravans of rowdy, usually drunk fans make the 7-hour trip between cities just to watch their team hopefully destroy their rival. That's dedication. That's hatred. That's what makes NFL rivalries beautiful. Which rivalry do you think is the most toxic? Drop your take in the comments.